You were promised a hangout and you're getting a hangout. Now, it's not the hangout you were promised, but you're still getting a hangout. We are going to process some. There we go. Now my camera is level. Sorry, I stuck my hand on the wrong side. Anyway, we're gonna process some comics. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna talk about some great comics here as I find them in this box. Well, these 3 boxes that I'm going to be working through over the next couple of days. And we're just going to hang out and we're going to kick it. We're going to talk comics. There's a lot to talk about. I'm looking at my screen. I should be looking at my camera. It's a whole thing. Jay's not here. I'm throwing all kinds of off. He might show up. I don't know. But we're going to process some comics. We're going to hang out. And we're going to talk comic books and maybe comic book movies, maybe superhero movies, maybe wrestling, maybe barbecue. We'll see. This is going to be a weird show, guys. So just hang with me. What is up, the internet? I am Fearless Leader here at the Experienced Producer Kyle. It's good to see you. Tonight was supposed to be a hangout where Jay and I fan cast all of the villains in the DC universe. And I'm going to be real honest with you. It's been a long weekend. I spent yesterday in 8-degree weather cooking barbecue, which was a very fun thing. And, we had a really good day cooking barbecue. But then today I have been processing comics and just dealing with the fallout of being exhausted from that. And so I reached out to Jay and I was like, hey man, I don't really feel like doing fantasy casting. And, I don't know what to do on the show. And so what we decided to do was I am going to hang out with you guys and answer your questions. We're going to talk about comic books. We're going to talk about all kinds of things while I process a collection. What is in this collection? I do not know. But the books, the one box is supposed to be the S's and the T's, but it starts with Moon Knight. Then the next one is supposed to be more S's, but also includes the I's and the H's and the J's and the K's. Then there's one box that I grabbed because it says Wolverine. And then I take it off and it's Spawn. So I don't know what's in this collection. I really don't. So we're gonna work on processing it. In the meantime, I want you guys. This is an AMA kind of show. You can ask me anything within reason, and we will talk about it. So long as it has to do kind of comic books, pop culture, that kind of stuff. And if you have questions about how I'm processing books, just shout them out. Ask me. I'm happy to tell you how I approach this thing that we call comic book collecting. So first thing I got to do is move you guys to one side of my screen and then do this window, move and resize to the other side of my screen so that I can actually work while we're doing this, so I can see both things. So if you have questions about comic books or you have questions about pop culture or anything, let me know, and I'm going to start working on Mark Spector Moon Knight. We start with number 58, and then we go to Moon Knight number 8, 12, 2. This collection is not in order. Another 2, 5, and another 2. So, this is the kind of example of how this collection goes, guys. So we have Mark Spector Moon Knight, number 58. And then we jump over to regular Moon Knight, number 8. Then we have Moon Knight number 12. And then all of a sudden, Moon Knight number 2. 2 copies, same book. Looking at them, and they see they're both newsstands. I understand. I mean, Spectre, Mark, Knight, Moon, TJ. And then Moon Knight 5. And then we come over to this third volume of Moon Knight, and we get a number 2. So this collection is not in any kind of, I don't know, friggin' usable order, but it is in an order that made sense, I'm sure, to the original owner. That person may or may not have been a Looney Tune, because this makes no sense to me. What just happened here? Why is my... Stop it. Don't do that. Okay. My spreadsheet is not loving the way I have this screen laid out right at the moment. So the way I process comics, and like we've talked about this a little bit, but I have a database that is not a publicly accessible database of basically almost every comic. And that database is literally just titles and then numbers, right? So it's, when I say almost every comic, there are obviously indies and small press. And I found a book earlier when I was processing called Survive that's about the Vietnam War, and I didn't have that in my database, right? And so the way I work the database is, when I find a book. So this one, for instance, is Mark Spector Moon Knight number 58. I go into my database and I mark that I have it. Then I can click on it in my database and it pulls up cover price, it pulls up comic price guide, and it pulls up Overstreet. Then the database populates those prices, right? Like, and again, if it's a book I have a lot of, like I deal with a lot of, well, for instance, in one of these boxes, there's a lot of Spider-Man Torment #1. It just has those prices ready to go. If it's a book I've never owned before, like Mark Spector Moon Knight number 58, it goes out and pulls those websites up, and then it allows me to average those websites. So all I have to do is say that on cover price, this book in a 9.0 condition, which I think this is probably a little bit less than a 9.0 condition, so we'll do an 8.5. On cover price, it's $15. On Comics Price Guide, it's 13, and on Overstreet, it's 10. So if I average out 14, 13, and 10, I get about $13. Or 15, 13, and 10, I get $13. So it tells me that I should price this copy at $13. And now it will have that in my database going forward. So then when somebody goes, oh, hey, Kyle, what, yada, yada, yada. What about this book? What up, Eddie? I could say, oh, well, okay, let me pull up my database. And it will then, once I have a price, I can go in and put in notes, right? So we're moving on to just regular Moon Knight #2 here. So Moon Knight #2. I couldn't tell you, TJ. It's been so long since I built it. But what it does is really it just goes into search engine. Like the piece of the code that I have written just opens a search, basically goes into a search engine like Google's, and then only feeds me the three sites that I want. I'll be honest, man. I wrote this in college. There are probably a lot less clunky ways to do it these days, especially with AI. But like, you can't use AI to grade comics, and I don't think you should use AI to price comics. But to have AI go out and pull that data and aggregate that data for me, would probably be more efficient. But I also don't want the AI training off of my database. So I kind of am in a little bit of a stuck predicament, right? Like, because I don't want the AI training on my database, like, can I let it have access to my database, or will it then just be like, "Oh, I have your information"? Yeah, crawlers. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, TJ. So again, now we're looking at number 12, number 5 here. Moon Knight number 5. Neither of my Moon Knight number 1s or 2s were in good enough condition, I would say, to warrant getting a bag and board for the price that they go for. Um, they were nice, but they've both got a lot of spine digs, both got a lot of spine dents. One of them has pretty significant cover, like indentation from being set on something. So, that book is in a 9.4, it's a $20 book, but if they're 5s or 6s, they're $5 books, 4 or $5 books. So with the way I'm treating this collection, if it's not worth more than $10, if it's not worth $8 to $10, it doesn't get a bag and board. It will go in the boxes to get bagged and boarded later, but right now it doesn't get a bag and a board. And the reason I'm doing it that way is that I am trying to get through this collection as fast as possible to get ready for a comic show I have coming up. And right. That one was maybe a little bit it's the Overstreet website, man. So it's even further behind than Access is. And I used to, back in the day, I had a friend who was every year taking the Overstreet catalog. And this kid was a data processing wizard, right? So he would basically input the old Overstreet's catalogs into Excel and make a searchable Excel document every year. It was dumb, but he really liked it. And again, like I say, it was dumb. That was something that gave him a lot of joy. It made him happy. It was relaxing to him. It made my skin itch to think about. But now he also has all of those documents from like 2006, 2007, and can just pull them up whenever he needs them. So it's really great to have that. Like when we talk about long-term tracking of value on books, like having the old Overstreet stuff in an Excel document means we can go and just copy a line. We copy a row out of Excel, and we do it for, say, each of 10 years. And then again, we use Excel or Google Drive or whatever, and we can average out and we can see the format. We can see the that's what I'm looking for, the history, and see the trajectory. All right. So this is a really nice copy of Moon Knight number 8. It's Bill Sienkiewicz art. So it goes for between 15 and 16 or 12 and $16. So we're gonna call it $10. And then, so like I said, you guys have seen these on my live shows. I write the price and I write, the interesting notes or whatever I need to know for selling it on the back in Sharpie. And that's how we handle it. And now that one is in my database. Now that's an interesting one because I've owned several copies of that Moon Knight number 8. So that was all already there. The crawlers were already getting the data. The thing that breaks my crawlers all the time, TJ, is when websites change their URLs. So like, so long as, like with Comics Price Guide, the URL for Moon Knight 12 is always the same. So it just goes out and finds it. Like when somebody changes their URLs, the whole thing breaks. I wish Sean would plan API access for Overstreet access, right? At some point. But I'm guessing that that's one of those things that like got waylaid with the whole Overstreets was owned by Diamond thing. I don't know though. Like API access for that would be really helpful. But I don't know. Again, I also don't know with how they built that app, how they built that site, how they built all of that stuff, that what their coding restrictions would be. Moon Knight number 2. This is volume like 3. Doug Mensch, Mark Texiera. High Strangers, part 204. Eclipse of the Truth. Excuse me. One of the other, maybe this isn't volume 4, is it? Yeah, it's volume 4. How annoying is that? I was off by like 2 whole volumes. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, I don't know what their coding restrictions are on the Overstreet Access app. So they have a backlog of features that he wants to get in the app before he can get there. Well, TJ, I mean that makes sense. Sorry, Jay texted me. That makes sense. But like I've had trouble like with the scan feature in it, in the app itself, which is part of why I've gone back to using this method. So much here. I was having a real problem with it wasn't parsing its database search. For like a while. And so I had stopped using it. Just because like the app wasn't functional. And now like I can't even get into the app. Like it's one of those things that I wish that they would, and I know he's kind of on his own island right now. Right? Like the dude is doing everything by himself. But like I can't reset my password on the app. So if I can't get it logged in, like it just, anyway. I'm finding the Overstreet Access app less useful than I used to, only because it's a one-man show or a couple-man show. It's not being maintained like it should, and that's a real bummer. Jay, go eat your dinner. Don't make me get angry at you. So here's a really, let me see, that's Color Break. So this is a really mispriced copy of What If number 30. The current price on this would be a Gem Mint 10. Not even close. In fact, so not even close that it's coming out of the bag and board, the original, and put it in, going in my this will be $1 later pile, and I'm saving the board for something for later. Like I think sometimes people who don't grade comics all the time are not good at. Well, I'm going to say something that going to make a ton of sense, and you guys are going to be like, "Yeah, that Kyle, he says smart things." Sometimes people who don't grade comics all the time aren't good at grading comics. I.e., they see a book that has value, or that they think is valuable, and then they treat it like it's hugely valuable. But like, this is what if number 20, what if number 30, what if if the Spider-Man's clone had lived? Okay. So now let's look at this corner and this corner. We'll go down the edge and look at that corner. And that corner. Now let's work down the spine, shall we? Color break, crimp, more color break. And then on the back, you can maybe see more clearly how off the fold is, because you can see the slightly browned yellowish pages. And then if I were to hold it level, what is this? Anyway, Superman 349 is a $1 book. Okay. Hey, now I think we're into, actually, this makes, okay, there's some order to this. There is a great many Spider-Mans in a row. But before we get to that, we have, again, I'm going to just throw these in the dollar box. I'm not going to look them up. Web of Spider-Man 100. And this is Vault of Horror. This is Gladstone EC. It would be a good book. It would be worth about $5, but it's just beat up. So it'd be a great way for people to get classic EC reprints. All right. So now we're into the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Hams, Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Mans, Web of Spider-Mans, all jumbled. So does anybody have any questions about comics? Or pop culture, or, what's happening in the pop culture world? While we hang out and I work through this collection. I did find a Web of Spider-Man #1 in a different box earlier, which was a pretty nice hit. If you guys want to see the books I found while processing books earlier today, I'm happy to go grab those. Some really cool keys that you guys will see on future shows, including a whole bunch of gold key Star Trek. Like, so if you like comic books with William Shatner's face on the cover, you might be in for a treat there. What movie am I looking forward to the most this year? Be honest, Ed, I don't know what's coming out. I don't pay attention to trailers. I don't watch trailers. I don't pay attention to release lists. I especially don't watch movie titles, right? I don't pay attention to movie titles. I am excited. I just, on Amazon, they served me an ad for a movie. I can't remember the name of it, but it's Dave Bautista and Jason Momoa in a action comedy where Jason Momoa seems to be the comedic one and Dave Bautista seems to be the straight man. So that'll be interesting to watch because, like if you watch Guardians, Bautista is the comic one. Wrecking Crew, maybe. Honestly, don't remember, TJ. I added it to my none of those. Ed, none of those. If you want to ask the question, which one will I go see in theaters? It'll be Supergirl. But I am actually not looking forward to any of them. And better than the other Amazon movie? Are we talking about War of the Worlds with who was it? Who was it that was in that? Can't remember. Anyway, and you've been around long enough to know, right? I don't necessarily look forward to comic book movies or TV shows because then I spend a lot of my life explaining to people why they're good or not, having to talk about them for months on end. And it sort of sucks the fun out of them, right? Especially when you have a movie. Yeah, that one, Bob's. Oh my God, that movie was bad. Anyway, the thing that really drives me nuts is when they make a comic book movie, and we discuss this a lot on here, and they call it something like Captain America Civil War. And then they make it about Iron Man. And, Captain America Civil War is a series in comic books that I read. And then the story they tell isn't Captain America Civil War, right? It's something else. And they expect, and everybody's like, but it was such a good movie. Or, they make Avengers Infinity War, and they don't tell the Infinity War. Hold on. Okay. They don't tell the Infinity War story. Age of Ultron's another great example of one of those where they just came so close and just failed so hard. Hey, we found a good book here in the stack. Probably in 7.75. Very fine, fine minus. It won't get a bag and board, but it will go into the box and we'll get bagged and boarded later. Anyway, so yeah, that's a prime example. Age of Ultron is a movie that they got so close, but then they failed so hard. Because Age of Ultron is a story. Spader was not amazing. He was Spader. James Spader has played the same character in every show he's done since Boston Legal. Boston Legal was the last time he played somebody that wasn't like Raymond Reddington or, Robert California. They're all the same guy. James Spader is a great actor so long as he is doing the one thing. So, okay. Age of Ultron was not at all close to being comic accurate to the Age of Ultron storyline. Civil War was not at all close to being comic book accurate in the Civil War storyline. Infinity War was not at all close to being comic book accurate in the Infinity War storyline. There was nothing there to appease people like me. And the argument so often is, well, you have to make comics that will appeal to everybody. You can't just make your comic book movies that have to appeal to everybody. You can't just make comic book movies that appeal to comic book fans. And I understand that. But let me ask you this. Why are there comic book fans? Is it because we like carrying around heavy boxes of paper? It's because the stories are great. So make a comic book movie that is comic book relevant, is comic book accurate, and do it well. And then people like me will stop bitching that you're not doing it well. And people who aren't comic book fans who go see these movies because they're the big action movie of the year won't know the difference. And if you read it, Triple B, and then watch the Age of Ultron movie, two different things. There may be some elements that are the same, like Ultron is in both, but like two vastly different things. So if you want to do Age of Ultron, I think that's great, but then do Age of Ultron. Because the people who don't know won't know, and the people who do know will be happy. I mean, like I said, there might be some similarities, i.e., Ultron exists, or occasionally you might see another Avengers character, but like, right, two vastly different things. The most accurate comic book movies that I've seen are the ones that predate everybody going to see comic book movies, right? Right. Ant-Man wasn't even in the Ultron movie. This is what I'm saying. Do you guys know how they originally killed Thanos? You needed Wasp. Wasp wasn't in Age of Ultron or in Infinity War or Endgame, right? You need that story. You need Silver Surfer. That scene where Hulk goes flying through Doctor Strange's solarium, it's supposed to be Silver Surfer. There's no reason you couldn't have just have, boom, there's Silver Surfer. And just kept going. So I don't get excited about comic book movies because I spend my life explaining to people, okay, yeah, this happened, but this didn't happen. Yeah, you saw this thing. Here's the source material. Be prepared for it to be so vastly different, you're not going to recognize it. I like this a lot. It's like doing a Sergeant Rock movie, but Rock is sitting in a VFW in 1980 talking about stuff, right? Or it'd be like making a Spider-Man movie, but instead of being able to climb walls and shoot webs, Spider-Man has arachnophobia. He's just a dude who collects spiders. It's why the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movies are so damn bad. That's not the Joker. That's somebody else. You might want to call him the Joker, but that's somebody else. That might as well be Krusty the Clown. And so I tend to prefer movies, and this goes way back to the question way back, what movies am I excited for? Movies that have nothing to do with my work. And that sucks because I would love to be able to sit here and say, guys, I went and saw Spider-Man and I loved it. But like not even remotely close. Now, I'm going to caveat all of this and say what they've announced in the DC universe with Elseworlds. They may be able to get away with some stuff that they wouldn't get away with me. Right? The Batman. Robert Pattinson. I'm so sad. Batman. Scene Kid Batman was pretty good. Like, it was an entertaining film, but it's not Batman. It's Batman in an Elseworld. So it's like Earth 6 Batman, where everybody there is obsessed with My Chemical Romance and nobody ever moved on after high school. Right? I mean, that sort of Elseworld stuff, I think, has a real potential. I think that's something that, again, can appease quite a lot of people. Because again, you can play games that you wouldn't otherwise play, right? And because we know there are infinite Earths, like we know what Crisis on Infinite Earths are, at least as comic book fans, you can tell us, you could say in one of these movies, you say it's an Elseworld movie, okay. I don't need you to tell me which world it's on. I can just accept that Batman isn't Earth Prime Batman, or isn't Earth 2 Batman, or isn't Earth X Batman. The things we know, right? Those are the Batmans we know. Those are the Batmans we recognize like this. But you just say it's an Elseworlds Batman. Okay. Like, is it Gerard Way's inside his head Batman? Because I get behind that. And unfortunately, with Marvel, the problem they have is that they've had those universes and they've collapsed them. The original Ultimates universe was like that. They had the Atlas universes. They had, Earth 616, but they've got like Earth 29987. Like where again they have off-world, Elseworlds, sort of Elseworld style stuff, but it's a different universe, right? But Marvel keeps collapsing those things into, in favor of having one continuity, and now Peter Parker can meet Miles Morales, as opposed to just having Miles Morales exist in a universe where Miles Morales exists. And as a result, what you get is lack of depth. And you're seeing that in the comics now too, right? Like when you go buy your Marvel comics and you read just regular Captain America, it's kind of bland. Or you read Spider-Man, it's kind of bland or whatever. But then the Ultimates were great. Well, because they can do more with the Ultimates because they're not constrained by the rules of Earth 616. But now they're ending that. Now, granted, they're bringing that back in May. They've announced that. But like they're ending that in favor of one continuity or one event that brings all the continuity together. That just seems dumb. Bendis was a great example, man. When Bendis hit Marvel, it changed the game. Bendis was working with grounded characters. Like, and we're not talking like Marvel doesn't have a lot of flyers, right? Marvel doesn't have a lot of Supermanish characters where it's okay, I have all of these powers, I'm so overpowered, right? They have a lot more a dude who goes to prison and gets some medical testing done and turns himself gets turned bulletproof. They have a blind guy who just so happens to be trained by a ninja and can hear real good, who's also a lawyer. They have Bruce Banner and I'm gonna forget the name. TJ, somebody, She-Hulk. What was her name? Like her real name, her government name. But like you have her, like, who are regular people who just get hit with gamma radiation and their cells choose to mutate in a way. Well, hold on there, TJ, because that's a thing too. But their cells just Jennifer Walters. Thank you, God, that was gonna drive me nuts. I had Jennifer Blood and Barbara Walters in my head, and I'm like, it's neither of those. And then all I could think of was Angie Harmon, and it didn't that either. So, thank you. But they're just people whose cells chose to react differently. They don't have any special powers, right? And that's what the mutants are. Mutants are just people who were exposed to this agent that causes folks to mutate, and they develop their mutant powers. Well, they're not superheroes. They're just regular people who just so happened to have something happen to them. And when Bendis started writing street level characters at Marvel, it really did turn Marvel on its head because it took a lot of otherwise campy world building that had happened over the years and made it much more real, made it much more sinister, and made it much more serious. And the thing about the X-Men side of the MCU, right, is that what Hickman did during the let's just forget the second part of the word X-Men and just call everything X something, or the thing of X, or whatever. F of X equals 27. Like, whatever the hell they called that stuff. It put the campy back in. It wasn't sinister. It wasn't scary anymore. It just was. And it was goofy again. Like, there is, you'll never hear me complain about Wolverine being a horn dog, because that is inherently Wolverine. But he took so much of what was normal and expected with the X-Men and just made it more normal and expected. And so now when you go to make an X-Men movie, your source material, they did Age of Ultron and they messed it up. So what other story can they do? Right? Because you have the Hellfire Club gala that is vanilla ice cream. You don't have anything interesting anymore. So I get really frustrated by stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, the question I asked was asked for 25 minutes ago, 20 minutes over, maybe even more, was what movies am I looking forward to? Probably something on HBO, something, a documentary, something like that. But in terms of comic movies, the only one I'll go see in theaters is likely Supergirl. Uh, okay, be real, TJ. Did I just like info dump and trauma dump for 40 minutes? Eddie, Triple V, because I kind of blacked out. I'm kidding, but not really. All right, back to pricing comics. We're into the spectaculars. Spectacular Spider-Man #1. Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man #1. All right. Do you guys want to see? The problem is, TJ, even for the neat popcorn buckets, you didn't get to go to the theater anymore. I buy them all off the internet because I don't want to spend the money at the theater, and I want them to get here like not destroyed. And I've met me. I will definitely break them in the movie theater. Do you guys want to see what I found earlier while processing comics? The books I found earlier? Because I did just find, again, this is the recently late, and I'm sorry, like, this is sad for me, Sal Buscema, John Romita Jr., written by, who wrote this? Jerry Conway. Pencils and inks and embellishment by Mike Esposito. Lettered by Joe Rosen. Colors by Dave Hunt. Spectacular Spider-Man #1. And so now I have to grade it. And this is one of those ones that, man, this is an annoying book. So here's why. Let's talk about it. So let's start with this corner. That corner, come on, focus on the book. Okay. So you see that there? Like, it's got an indent, it's got like a little tear there on the corner. So we come across the other side. Nice rounded corner. Come down here. Nice rounded corner there. And we come over here, and that one's square. Then along the spine you have, let's count them, shall we? 1 2 3 4 about 6 spine dings, 4 of which are color breaking. The pages aren't bad in terms of color. Book smells like it's supposed to smell. Doesn't smell moldy or smoky. But then you flip it over and it's one of these backs. And you go right there. And you might not be able to see it on camera, but there is a tear in the back cover. So what goes from being like a, in a 9 for a $55 book, in this condition is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $10. And there's nothing wrong with that, but like, because it means somebody who might not have been able to afford this book initially will be able to afford this book now at a comic show, at a Comic-Con. Somebody who's looking for a key because they want to practice cleaning or pressing or whatever. This would be a great book for that. But it's really disappointing when you see a great book like this that because the person never bagged and boarded their books, didn't take care of it, it's not as nice as you'd like it. First appearance, Edward Lansky. All right. Anywho, that was a little fun little digression. Who else has questions for me? I'm just chilling out, processing books here. We have Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 5 is next. This is the first full appearance of the Hitman. Some of them are, and some of them are not, TJ. I'll be real honest, man. I have, in an effort to get ready for convention season, been buying so many comics that I do not know which boxes are from which collection. Because I sort them all the same way. And that is, I don't sort them. But if there are tabs, I pull the tabs. And then write on the box what's supposed to be in them. So this is first appearance of the Hitman. The only problem really that I have on this book, front and back, is this corner. So it's not in terrible condition. I would say it's in pretty, middle or better condition. So, 7.75. What were you looking for out of the Dreamers collection, though, TJ? For those of you who don't know what TJ's talking about when he says these aren't the Dreamers books, are they? When we were at Dreamers and Make Believers in Baltimore a couple weeks ago, Torma from Oni Press and I did a live sale together where we were selling some of their inventory, helping them do some fundraising. And at the end of the show, at the end of the event, they don't deal in vintage books. So I bought everything in their vintage collection. And brought it home, and I'm adding it to my collection. Now, I kind of knew what was in it, and I kind of knew what to expect, but I'm finding things in that collection that I either didn't see the first time, or should have been paying more attention to. Okay, I have to check this one. This is Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 9. There are 1, 2. This is the first appearance of White Tiger. There are a number of different ways this book came. And the interesting thing is normally I see what they call the B cover, which is the 35-cent variant. Those are definitely not in this stuff, TJ. I can guarantee that. This is the other end of the alphabet for sure. The Dreamer stuff, that if there is Dreamer stuff that's here, and this definitely is some Dreamer stuff, because I could see all of the Spider-Man torments. But it's definitely the other end of the alphabet. Anyway, so in 1977, Marvel charged $30 or 30 cents for comics, but they wanted to test raising the price a nickel to 35 cents. Those were the days, right? So what they did is they chose like 4 or 5 test markets for 35-cent variants, and one of them just happens to be my area. My area has for years been a test market for everyone from Marvel Comics to Taco Bell to different candy companies, to all of those things. By the way, if you guys have ever eaten a Doritos Locos Taco, you're welcome. They debuted here, and I ate so many of them that I'm relatively sure that they exist not because of me, but not because of me, right? I mean, I think I had probably 100 during that test phase of that thing. And also, like, I'm a fat kid. I can eat 7 or 8 tacos at a shot. So it isn't like it was that many, but like still. Anyway. 35-cent variants. And so while the 35-cent variants are rare, they're not uncommon around here. And this is one of those books. So this is Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 9. First comic appearance of White Tiger, Hector Ayala. And then there's the B cover is the 35-cent variant. And then there's a C, which is a Whitman. And then there's actually a Mark Jewelers version of this book as well. So 4 different versions of this book potentially on the market. I just have 2 of the regular A covers, or, at the time, just the regular price, not Mark Jewelers inserts, not Whitman's, just regular. Now, the unfortunate thing is, again, and this is really frustrating, right? Neither of these are in particularly high grade condition. Now, what's cool about this one is that it's the higher grade. It's probably an $8 to $10 book. But then there's this one, which is really beat up. And so somebody will score this book on one of my future live shows for $1. Most expensive 35-cent variant I ever owned is actually the first appearance of Iron Fist. Was the most expensive 35-cent variant I ever owned. Peter Parker Spectacular 10. $11. Al Milgrom cover. So this is funny, and I laugh at this because I will go up to him and say this to him now. So this is Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 11. Medusa appearance. Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 11. Medusa appearance. The cover is by Al Milgrom. But let's see here. Inside is Chris Claremont, who's a guest writer. Art by Jim Mooney. Ink by Mike Esposito. Where's your mark at, Al? I don't know. But so I will take this up to Al at a convention, and be like, so they say this was the cover was by Alan Milgram. And be like, don't call me that. You know how to call me that. He hates it when people call him Al. Or when people call him Alan. He prefers Al. Okay. So we've been doing this for like an hour, and like I ranted for not a small amount of time about superhero movies, which like was not my intention, but like it's always fun. Um, so does anybody else have any other questions? Anybody else? No, not at all. TJ, well, then I guess I suppose. Oh, from that particular book? Yeah, probably. Um, sorry. When you say crew associated with Al Milgram, I think about the Detroit Mob. So Al, Starlin, um, Tom Warzakowski, Arvell Jones, Keith Pollard, Rich Buckler, and there were a few more guys from that group that all started making zines out of a bookstore on the east side of Detroit. They all met at this bookstore because it was one of the few places that sold comics, and they started making the Detroit Fanfare zine. And then Al and Rich got work, and they're like, "You guys should move to New York and like sleep on our floor, and like you can get work at Marvel and DC." And sure enough, they did. So like when I think about crew, I think about those. When I think about Al and his crew, I think about those guys. And like people like to leave Tom Warzakowski out of that group, and I'm not sure Tom would even consider himself part of that group. But like when you look at the old Detroit Fanfare newsletters, the old Detroit Fanfare zines, lettered by Tom Warzakowski. I don't know. Is being lumped in with those guys like being an AA, or is it not? I don't know, but I hold those guys in such high esteem that the more people I feel like I can lump in with that group, the better. Oh, here's a fun one. Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man 17. Written by Bill Mantlo, art by Sal Buscema and David Hunt. Uh, Bruce was the letterer and Janice was the colorist. You can figure out who those guys are. But the cover art, without me telling you, who drew the cover? What do you think? You got a guess? It's a big name. I have one as well, TJ. That's right, Leonard. That is a John Byrne cover. Danny Drake as Rampage. Champions appear in flashback, and an angel appearance in this book. And this is a pretty nice copy. Definitely a 9. Well, not definitely a 9, but 9-ish. So what I say, Bobby Drake is Rampage. Champions appear. And Angel appears. Very cool. Okay. And then, because of course this is all out of order, I have another copy of number 9 that is in really good shape. Really nice shape for number 9. Paris, 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 Paris. You know, I I think he did, TJ, but I don't think he worked on the zine. Like, I think that, like, and on some level, that's the distinction that I make, right? Like, and it's why technically Starlin isn't part of the group, right? Starlin never worked on the Marvel or on the Detroit Fanfare zine, but he did draw some stuff that was referenced by them, so he kind of counts, which is just a weird kind of be like Jim Starlin sort of counts for this, you know. Um, and like there were a couple of guys who were like a generation older, um, but um, because there's like no definitive what's the word for there's no definitive roster of those guys. Like it's everybody kind of has to draw their own. Who do you include and who do you not? And the way I do it is, hey Arvel, you tell me. All right. Here's a little bit of a minor key in Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 22. First meeting of Spider-Man and Moon Knight. It's a Dave Cockrum cover with Joe Rubinstein. So that's fun. And again, this is a not perfect copy. I will say that it's a not perfect copy. But it's a nice copy. And like there are a lot of guys who deal in this age that like they don't want to deal in nice. They want to deal in mint, right? And there's so many comic collectors these days who are like, I was in a group the other day. I got this Scotty Young variant today at the comic book store, and it's not like perfectly flat laying. Should I have it pressed when I send it to CGC? And I just wanted to reach through my computer and shake the guy by his ears. And like I get it, everybody collects for their own reasons. But bro, you're sending a new release Scotty Young to CGC, and then like it's not it doesn't lay perfectly flat. Like it has some of that natural like page roll or some of that natural cover roll because of the difference in stock. And you want to know if you should have it pressed? I don't know. But anyway, I like to deal in nice and not even always nice. Like I like to deal in beat up copies of things because I like to sell comics that people can afford. Uh, Like you go up, I go up to some of these dealers at conventions, and like I know what they have, and I know what the value of these things are. I do this semi professionally, or somewhat professionally. I don't know. Like you guys determine that for me. Like, am I a professional at this? I don't know. But like I do make a living selling comics, so I know what stuff's worth. And they'll be like, well, this copy in this condition is worth, and they'll give me a number that's not based in reality, which is one of my favorite things. Because then I can go, okay, no, but here's what it's actually worth. Can you meet me there? And they will never do it, which is fine. That's one thing I did like about the Overstreet Access app, TJ, is that I could be like, well, do you trust Overstreets in terms of value? And most of these guys will be like, yeah, I trust Overstreets. Then you open Overstreets and you're like, so for this Silver Age book that isn't going nuts on eBay right now or whatever, like it's not like they haven't announced it's going to be a movie or something. Overstreets is a reasonable price guide, and show them Overstreets and be like, well, but maybe it's like, come on. So I like to sell comics to people. I like to deal in comics that people can afford. And it's why I have a big sign in my booth at every show. See a price, make me an offer. If you come at me reasonable, usually I'm willing to work with you, right? Like again, I just priced this is Peter Parker Spider-Man 26. Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man 26. I priced it at $15. Make me a reasonable offer, and I'd much rather sell you the comic than not sell you the comic. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way I try to do business. I like to do it that way. All right. Well, it does not look like Jay is coming. He was eating his dinner, and I told him to eat his dinner. But this has been like a fun, just Kyle talks for an hour vacation. Oh yeah, valuation on weird stuff is always weird, right? So TJ, here's how I've started to deal with this. And maybe you'll find this useful and maybe you won't, right? Like, so I have my database, but when I'm at a convention, especially, I'll go to Overstreet, I'll go to Cover Price, and I'll go to Comics Price Guide. And again, I aggregate them, right? I average them out. But let's just say one of them doesn't have a price, and there's no price on eBay. You make the price that the guy's asking your third number, and then you average, right? And if the number that the guy's asking you to pay is within 5 or 10% of the average, then I'm usually willing to pay it. If Overstreet has a book for 10, Cover Price has it for 40, and the guy's asking 75, okay, now we've got to talk, right? Like, because now you're looking at $125. What is that divided by 3? So that's $41, like an average of the 3. $42. So if you're within about 10% of that, I normally would accept your price, right? But if you're trying to charge me $75 for Young Lust or something, I'm going to negotiate with you on your price because you're wrong. And it's actually, guys, this is a good tool. This is one of Producer Kyle's professional tool tips. If you're pricing books and you don't know what your book is worth, or you're trying to figure out what you should value something at, go to the 3 big ones. Go to any 3, pick 3, right? Key Collector, Comics Price Guide, Overstreet's Access, Cover Price, eBay sold. There's a million different places, CLZ, there's a million different places that you can get comic values, right? But take 3 and average them. If you think that your book is worth $95 and the average of those books is $85, well, your difference is, or if you think your book is worth $90 and the average of those 3 is 100, increase the price of your book by 10%. Your 10% difference, right? Or if you're a 25% difference, increase your price by 15%. Like, once you have your average, you can kind of see what the spread is, right? So if there's a $20 swing between the three books, and you're right in the middle, then you're probably right. There are 3 sites, you're probably right. If they're higher than you, increase by like whatever the percentage difference is. That's like the hardcover Action Labs Molly Danger #1, designed by Jamal Igle. FMV appears to be around $10 unsigned. Right. So then what's the value of Jamal Igle's signature? I don't know. But so I was talking to a guy who was trying to price an ASM 300 the other day. He had it priced at $350. The aggregate on the things was $300. Okay. Well, you're $50 heavy. So what is the percentage difference, right? $300 divided by $350. And I'll be honest, his copy was incredibly nice. So that's like so you're at 85%. So you're at 15% price difference. So, okay, make your book $340 or $335. Right? That gets you closer to your average price. That's how I value when I'm valuing things. A 300, trying to get 350 for a 300 is like trying to get $1,000 for, a Death Superman, right? You're not going to get it because you can get it pretty regularly for a different price. But if you're trying to value it for your collection, you can certainly value it higher. And so that's how I value things for my collection. Take the average, take what I paid or what I value, what I have on my value of the book, and then, average, take those numbers and find out your percentage difference and then adjust by that percent. So again, 15%, off 350 is what, like $12, 9, 10, 10, 50. So, make a small adjustment and that gets you closer to your accurate price. Okay. This has been a fun Kyle Talks for an Hour show. I think I'm going to shut it down and try and get through the rest of this box because there's still a lot of books to go. I didn't get a lot done while I was ranting about comic book movies, but it was fun to rant with you guys. So, here's what I need you to do. If you're watching on YouTube and you can afford it, please become a member of our YouTube channel. It is a very affordable and passive way in terms of pricing to help us keep this thing going. Tune in for all of our shows. Hit like, hit subscribe, click the bell, all of the many, many things that you can do on YouTube. But help us out with our shows. Help us out by watching our shows. And then tune in tomorrow for Comic Collectibles with Rex. Depending on how Jay and I are feeling, maybe we'll be back with a little bit of a live sale tomorrow evening between Rex and Big B and Bronze's show. But then tomorrow night at 11, Big B and Bronze are here with Best Coast Comics. Then Tuesday's a big day, and we've got all kinds of stuff happening this week. Find out more over on our social medias. Find out more on our website and all of that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, guys, I am going to let you go. We will talk very, very soon. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Later.